Chapter 76. How long have you been collecting them? Laurel approached and asked, picking up my pocket. I don't know, ever since I came back. Most of my allowance is in Lombardi's bank, and this is part of it. Most of my allowance is in Lombardi's bank, and it's part of it. How? I suppose so, if you think about your allowance. After listening the pocket strap and looking at the contents, Laurel's voice stopped. Miss, huh? Are you going to take all this money with you? Laurel sighed softly. She seemed to think that I, who was unaware of the circumstances outside the mansion, had stored up ridiculous amounts of money. If you take half the money in this pocket, no, I need it all. But miss, with all this money, I know that's enough money to buy a building in downtown Lombardy. I know. Laurel's expression was dazed by my words. How did you know that? There's a way to know everything. I've lived alone outside the mansion for years. Anyway, I take all the money I need. If you're going to buy dresses and jewelry, why don't you just write a bill in for Lombardy Mansion? You don't have to take cash like this. I never said I'd buy dresses and jewelry. I smiled at Laurel, who tilted her head and at my unpredictable words. Asterisk, 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 you're finally going out. I got into the carriage, wearing the plain, ready to wear from the Gallian clothing store, which was not decorated. In the meantime, I have sometimes gone to the palace vicarage with my father and grandfather, but it is the first time that I have gone out alone like this. No, I'm not alone. The day of going out with my miss has come, with Laurel who's more excited. Let's go to Lombardy Square first. The carriage began to move slowly when Laurel passed my word to the coachman. A familiar scene flashed through the window, not long after running down the boulevard from the Lombardy mansion. We arrived at the square. Lady, get off safely. Laurel stepped down first and held my hand. Wow, walking in the square after a long time was more amazing than I thought. Cool. The square, where many people were busy, and the statue of First Lombardi standing in the middle felt much bigger than I remembered. To be honest, compared to the always quiet and neat Lombardi mansion, the scenery is not so beautiful. But there was definitely something energizing in the dust and loud noises of the wagons passing by. I said, taking a deep breath in the busy air of the square, let's go over there. I grabbed Laurel's hand and pulled her on one side of the square. What's over there, lady? Yes, the most delicious bakery in the world. I walked off the boulevard along familiar alleys. Laurel said it was her first time here and looked around, wondering. When I turned the corner, I saw the building I used to rent in the distance. A small room on the second floor of that shabby building was my home. Maybe now else is tired every night and is resting for tomorrow. And in front of it is the bakery where I bought fresh bread every morning. I couldn't stand the smell of sweet bread any longer, so I let go of Laurel's hand and ran there. I happened to see Aunt Perry, who was displaying fresh bread, a younger face than I remember, but the characteristic, warm, and friendly face remained the same. Hello, ma'am. Huh? Yes, hello. I've never seen you before. Did you move in nearby? When I first moved in with a dangling bag after being kicked out of Lombardi's mansion, Aunt Perry welcomed me with this saying, laughing as if you met someone who will be your neighbor for a long time. I'm Tia. Yes, Tia. You can call me Aunt very comfortably. What kind of bread do you want today? Oh, I can finally eat it. My heart pounded. I'd like two baguette sandwiches. Oh, I guess you've heard somewhere that our special menu is delicious. I've missed this sandwich for the past few years, which is not written on the menu and only regular customers know. Miss, how could you run like that alone? Laurel, who followed late, gasped. Miss, Aunt Perry takes turns looking at Laurel with round eyes. Oh no, it's my stepsister. I have an older brother who has a big age gap. Haha, feel free to call me by my first name. Oh, you were the youngest in the family. No wonder you look so loved. Here you go. I could see the fat baguette cut in half and filled with the sandwich with the ham and cheese that was sold at the nearby market. Oh, it smells good. It was a cheap sandwich that was no match for the food at the Lombardi mansion, but I missed it so much. Goodbye. Yes, come back. Aunt Perry smiled and waved. A few steps out, Laurel whispered in my ear, Miss, what if you eat something like this and have a stomach ache? Don't worry about it. Try it, Laurel. It's really delicious. I opened my mouth wide and asked greedily, yeah, this is it. Aunt Perry's sandwich while walking down the street. I missed you. Laurel, a precious young miss of the Dillard family, hesitated at my ridiculous action. While it's out of the common sense for ordinary aristocrats to eat on the street, no matter how relatively free Laurel is, she has never done it. If you're not going to eat it, give it to me. Yum, yum. At my words, Laurel took a timid bite, confirming that no one was walking by. Oh my, it's good, isn't it? Yes, wow, it's so good. She takes 2 or 3 bites in surprise. Looking at that look, I began to eat the sandwich again. Oh, salty and savory. It's delicious. I should be a regular there, Laurel said with a twinkle in her eye. I naturally walked to my next destination when Laurel was distracted by the sandwiches. It was a noisy downtown Lombardy market. People buy and sell all kinds of things, such as fruits, food, and household goods. I don't go to the busy main street. I turned slightly and arrived at the new town next to it. A dark green building was seen on a slightly more orderly street than the market. It was Lombardy's second branch of Callahan clothing store, which opened recently. Are you going to the clothing store? Yes, it's a new place. I'll take a look. I asked L'Oreal to look at the clothing store where people kept coming and going. Let me check something out. Exit. Let's go in separately. And don't tell them my name unless people recognize me first, okay? Yes, miss. When I opened the door, I saw the inside of a well organized clothing store. It looks like this. It was the first time I'd ever come in person. I've only heard from Clarivan. The clothing store was similar to the clothes store I knew. They said women's clothes on the first floor and men's clothes on the second floor. I was checking one by one what I had only been briefed on in writing. At a glance, Laurel, a noble young lady, was immediately followed by a staff member of a clothing store. But no one cares about me as a child who came alone. Hello, miss. Are you here alone? It was about time. I was a little disappointed in the customer service skills of the Gallian clothing store. A gentle voice spoke to me. It was a woman with black hair and purple eyes. I didn't come alone. I'm waiting for my dad. Oh, I see. Then if you need anything, you can call me anytime. The woman smiles at me, then goes to another guest and starts a conversation with a friendly smile. I watched the staff working when I was looking at clothes in the clothing store. It was then that a loud voice came in. No, I just bought it. A middle-aged man was arguing with an employee with an angry face. Why don't you trust people? There were about 10 neat navy dresses piled up in front of the man. It seemed like a person who refunded clothes. How dare you call the Libertine family a liar? Really? The middle-aged man spoke high-handedly, raising his chin. When eyes gathered around him, the staff of the clothing store blushed and forced his head down. It's not that. I'm sorry, I'll give you a refund. That's the way it is. The smiley man's face fell a little fishy. Something feels odd. Eventually, it was when the employee tried to make a bill worth the price of the clothes and gave it to the man. Excuse me for a moment. The woman who talked to me smiled when she gently blocked the stuff. Hello, I'm Violet and I'm in charge of the Lombardi branch. You said you were from the Livortin? Well, isn't it? Are you then the butler of the Livortin family? Call me. I wasn't going to reveal it. That's right. The man frowned, speaking in a dithering way. Our clothing store makes a document called receipt for every transaction. The same goes for a pair of gloves. You just bought 40 of these clothes, and you said you wanted to get a refund for 10 of them. Then you have to bring those 40 receipts. I've never heard of that before. If you were a butler, of course you would know that. She still looked smiling, but Violet's smile was cool. The man, looking disappointed, quickly explained, Wow, it's my first time dealing with a clothing store. The Livortin you mentioned are not here. They have made 3 deals with us at the Lombardi headquarters. I'm sorry, but I've never seen your face before. Excuse me, can I have your name? I mean it. The man gritted his teeth and ran out of the clothing store, staring at Violet. Whoa! Sighing softly, Violet quickly regained her smiling face and apologized to the guests. I'm sorry, sir. An employee who had been tricked into paying the man approached and told Violet. It's okay, but make sure you check the receipt next time. And keep in mind the information about the family you deal with frequently. Did you forget that the Libertine had a thief a few days ago? Ah, that's what happened, right? I smiled inwardly when I watched Violet patting the grieving employee on the shoulder. All right, that will do. It was when I was so satisfied. Violet, who checked out the window at the sound of the carriage, stopped, approached me, and lowered her waist to meet my eye level and said, Your Grace has arrived, Lady Florentia. End of chapter 76. Chapter 77. You know me. I've never actually seen you, but I've heard a lot about you and memorized you. You didn't seem to want to show up a little while ago, so I'm sorry, miss. She is very thorough. As expected, it's like Violet Lippy. I smiled and reached out one hand to Violet to ask for a handshake. Nice to meet you, Violet. Did you know my name? Violet opened her eyes wide. I heard it a little while ago, and I tend to memorize important things when it comes to clothing. Oh my, Violet smiles softly, but her sharp eyes are constantly trying to read me. Violet Lippi. In my previous life, she was Clarivan's right-hand man and the second in command of the Pellet Traders Company. Clarivan's genius was important to Pellet's brilliant growth in a short period, but Violet's meticulous management was also important. If Clarivan took the lead and led the business boldly, Violet was a fantastic duo that managed everything meticulously behind the scenes, without a person named Violet Lippi. There would have been no pellet traders company that had risen like a comet. Looking at how she was doing her job a while ago. I don't think there's any need to worry about being younger than Violet at that time. Would grandfather have felt this way when he saw great people? I smiled heavily at Violet. Tia, when I heard the sound calling me, it was my father who was just entering a clothing store. Dad, my father's eyes were round with a dumbfounded face when I ran and hugged him. How can you be here? Because I can go outside from today. Yes, that's right, that's right. My father smiled in vain while patting me on the back. I can't believe the day when I meet you outside like this has come. The muttering father's voice became bright by his daughter's work. My father is too. How did you know Dad was here? My father usually goes to work at his office in Lombardi's headquarters, or the capital's branch. This branch was one of the places my father often visited, not long after it was opened. Sir Clarivan told me. Just in time, Clarivan came in and handed over his jacket to a clothing store employee. Sir Clarivan, who received my father's attention, explained with She wants to surprise you, Sir Gallihan, and Lady Florentia asked me about the schedule. I see, haha. Dad, shall we go outside? I asked while holding my father's hand. That would be great. My father looked around and nodded. It was because everyone in the clothing store was looking at us. Who's making all this noise? It wasn't such an unpleasant stare. Rather, they seemed to have bumped into a famous actor or entertainer and whispered among themselves in surprise. I can't believe I actually saw that famous Galleria Lombardi, father and daughter. Galleria. You're so cute. The man back there. Then, Mr. Clairvan Pellet. The murmur was growing so loud that I could hear their conversation. Let's go eat something delicious. It's lunchtime anyway, so I can interrupt my father's work a little bit. When I said so, my father nodded with a big smile. So, Tia, what do you want to eat? Where should I go? The list of famous restaurants that I wanted to go to after returning but had to endure crossed my mind. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. And like his appearance, which seems to enjoy fruit or light vegetarian food, my father was thoroughly meat eating, was very satisfied with the restaurant I guided him to. In my previous life, I used to come here with a big heart when my salary came in. It was not a too luxurious place, but they roast large chunks of meat in the oven, but were excellent. Come back here later, miss. Laurel was happy too, but Clarivan was a little different. But Clarivan's reaction was a bit different. Are you all right, Sir Clarivan? After putting down the fork without eating well, I asked Clarivan, who was wiping his mouth with a napkin. I was wondering if he was sick. That's fine, it just doesn't suit my taste. Oh no, bro, Sir Clarivan doesn't like meat very much. Laurel habitually tried to call him brother, but realized it was outside and said correctly, huh? He looks like a meat eater. You took a bite of the bloody rare steak, chewed on it, and then you drank the red wine and looked like you were laughing. That's a very specific example, but I don't really like meat. I didn't know either. When my father cut the meat into large pieces, he was shocked. Then, what kind of food do you usually like? I like light salads or seafood-based foods, but there aren't many restaurants like that, so I usually cook. Do you cook? It was a series of surprises. When he got home, I thought he would leave his homework and go straight to bed. I can't believe such a person cooks at home. Then, hold on. I ordered one more food from the menu. It's a fresh salad mixed with freshly trimmed seafood and leaf vegetables, and it was a popular menu here besides roast. Wow, Clarivan, who took a bite without much expectation, was surprised. It's delicious, isn't it, Clarivan? Yes, thank you for your concern, Lady Florentia. It's good to have a nice meal together. Obviously, it's nice to see Clarivan whose meal speed has changed from a while ago. I rested my chin with one hand and watched my father, and it looked like my father's meal was almost done, so I picked it up. Dad, Clarivan, give it to me. Cough, cough. For some reason, father and Clarivan were heard simultaneously. Dad, are you okay? Clarivan is here too. I handed water to two people who coughed. Well, cough. What the hell do you mean, Kia? My father asked, still chilling with his mouth covered with the napkin. Then, unlike my father, I stare at Clarivan with fierce eyes. Sir Clarivan, explain. No, there's some misunderstanding. Everyone was wiping the sweat off his forehead with a napkin wiping his mouth. I cut in and explained before further misunderstanding. Literally, I need your help from now on. Clarivan, did you resign from my grandfather? Yes, I resigned yesterday. As I mentioned earlier, Clarivan arranged his employment relationship with my grandfather. Grandfather seemed a little shocked, but I heard that he said to Clarivan, if you need anything in the future, just tell me. My father now stopped coughing and was looking at me and Clarivan with serious eyes. It will be possible to work at the clothing store for a while, but later, speaking of which, I felt a little sorry for my father. Starting a new job with me was definitely a better opportunity for Clarivan, but he's my father, who's been running the ready-to-wear business together. Yes, that's fine, Sir Clarivan, but my father's answer was simple and clear. The clothing store is stable now, so it should be fine. Tia needs more help from Clarivan than I do. My father doesn't fully know about my relationship with Clarivan. It just seemed to him that I was determined to get something started with the help of Clarivan. Considering my age, it was the most reliable. No one would think I would take the initiative in doing business with Clarivan at the forefront. Please take good care of Tia from now on, Sir Clarivan. When my father smiled and said so, Clarivan nodded. Fortunately, my father and Clarivan were on their way back to the office to rest after completing all their schedules. Father had to discuss a few more things with Violet, but Clarivan had done all his work, so I took Clarivan and Laurel to my third destination today. It was a busy street not far from the Glaliahan clothing store. However, it was a place where a lot of carriages passed by because it was somewhat far from the market and the boulevard was wide open. Among them, I led the two people to the three-story building on the corner. This is it, Laurel? Yes, that's right. The previous owner said he was waiting here. Oh, there he is. Laurel approached a middle-aged man, greeting him gladly. Where are we, Lady Florentia? Clarivan looked around and asked me. You'll find soon enough. The man called the former owner led us to the first floor of the building. Already everything was emptied, and there was only a small table inside. And he took a contract out of his arms. Most of it was already written, and only a few blanks and the last signature were left. Now, what's the name of the new owner of the building? Laurel questioned, looking at me. You can write Clarivan Pellet. Miss Florentia? I could hear Clarivan calling me from the side, but I didn't look over there. Clarivan Pellet. Well, it's all done, so pay the balance and sign here by a man named Clarivan. The man signed the part with his name on it and put down the pen. Here's the balance. I put my packet down on the desk and said, it was my pocket money bag that I brought from home. Cash, let's count for a second. While the master counted the gold coins in my pocket, I turned to Clarivan. This will be our office from today. But why did you name me? Because this building belongs to Clarivan. But I'm Lombardi, so my grandfather will know all the buildings I've acquired. Late or early, I can't do that, so it's right that Clarivan is the owner of the building. Is that right? But apart from that, this building really belongs to Clarivan. It's a gift to do well in the future. Clarivan stood still for a while, unable to speak. Meanwhile, the former owner counted all the coins and confirmed that the balance was correct. Come on, Clarivan, sign. I handed over the pen to Clarivan after taking it and rolling it in his hand for a while. Clarivan soon wrote down his name without hesitation. Thank you, miss. After signing, Clarivan looked at me. The former owner, who finished the contract, satisfactorily put the contract back in his arms and looked back at us and asked, Oh, and when I report, I have to register the name of the building here with the government office. What are you going to do with it? Pellets, I answered. After the last name of Clarivan Pellet, please report it as Pellet Shop. End of chapter 77. Chapter 78. A guest was visiting the Emperor's palace today. It was her father, Angenes, the lord of the family. What did you just say? Rubini turned around and stared at the lord. Julieta Avino. Did she sing at Lombardi's banquet? The Empress accumulated anger at Julieta, who rose rapidly as an opera singer and recently became the Emperor's new lover was considerable. However, the fact that Julieta's performance at the banquet of her rival Lombardi finally exploded. Ah! Screaming, the Empress began to throw everything. There were no exceptions to the vase made of transparent crystals and to the teacups and teapots that the maid had just brought in. It was not until the floor of the parlor was messed up with dozens of sharp clang that the Empress stopped having seizures. Sigh, sigh. Her hair, which had been neatly twisted and tied, came out and shook at every harsh breath of the Empress. That pitch, she's got Lombardi's line. Sharp, Lombardi's line. Plop, said the Empress, sitting on the drawing room sofa, clutching her armrest. I think it was the beginning of a promotional model for a Gallihan clothing store. Yeah, I guess so. The Empress bites her lips. It wasn't because of the Emperor's unclean reign. It was such a relationship from the beginning they were. Even Rubini had a few lovers who met secretly, since they were a couple who were strictly exchanging things with each other. Having an extramarital relationship did not mean to be angry. However, it was a different story if it compromised her position in the aristocratic society. The countless women who passed through the Emperor were no match for Rubini. Rather, good buds were seen among them, and those who knew how to obey the Empress were kept by her side and served her. But Julieta wasn't that kind of thing. She likes to be noticed everywhere, and she wanted to be the center of attention. The problem was that the attention and gaze should all belong to Rabini. I'll have to work on it soon. At the cold Rabini's words, Angena's lord lowered his eyes quietly. Rabini's cruelty sometimes gave even his father goosebumps. The plan is going well, isn't it, father? Yes, Empress. You have to put it in our hands. You never know when you'll miss this opportunity again. Rabini's eyes blazing as if they were a burner in fire. The Empress is right. Lord of Angenes closed his mouth and lifted his own teacup left alone on the table. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. After a long time, the Lombardi family sat in one seat. It was Lombardi's family dinner. As usual, children and adults were divided into two tables. Lorraine and Belsac had already arrived. I greeted Lorraine with a smile on my face. Hello, Lorraine. Hi. And Belsac sat down without saying hello. And then Astalio and Craney brothers arrived. You sit over here. Astalio roughly pulled his younger brother to the seat next to him. Craney's face, which was shaken by the wind, is all teary. Maybe it's because he doesn't want Craney to hang out with me. It was obvious that his brother, like him, was thinking of making Belsac smart. I'd like to sit over there, Craney murmured, looking next to me in a tearful voice. But Astalio frightened Craney with a scarier face. Sigh, I said with a sigh inside. Craney, come here. When Craney heard my call, he rejoiced and watched Astalio for a moment. It's okay, so come here. After a moment of hesitation, Craney eventually ran and sat next to me. I whispered in Craney's ears. If Astalio bothers you in the future, you can run to your mother, okay? Ronette hated Astalio's use of violence against Craney. Perhaps even now, Astalio is gently picking on Craney, avoiding his mother's notice. Yes, Craney still looked at Astalio with anxious eyes, but he smiled brightly and nodded. Oh, I guess I'll have to play with him more often. In fact, playing with Astalio doesn't give Craney any good. It's just a negative effect. Craney sat between me and Lorraine, who poured water in front of Craney, whose arms were still short and gave him a variety of things. Hi, Tia. The twins joined the table, but the faces of the two were not very good. I think it was like this last time. What's wrong with your faces? It was so gloomy that I felt uneasy about it. Myron hesitated for a moment and saw Gilio nodding his head, small, and said, My father and mother have been having a bad relationship lately. They? Shannonette and Vestian, who have enough sesame seeds to tell them to go away. Huh? They've never fought in front of us, but today they had a little big fight, the twins said in a low voice. What made them fight like that? I don't know, but I thought it was about the family. Lombardi and Scots have been used a lot. A quarrel between the names of both families. That's why you were in Scots for so long last time. Uh-huh. Maybe they too need a little distance, Mayron said quite calmly. I just hope I don't have to choose between my parents. Gilio also said resignedly. Oh, come to think of it, it's around this time. It occurred to me that Shannonette and Bestian had divorced. I looked at the table where the adults were eating. Shannonette was eating in silence with a pale complexion, but Bestian looked a little different than usual. Laughing and chatting nonstop, it was just the way it was. It was the two people who contrasted perfectly. Then my father was seen saying hello to my grandfather when he finished eating. He was busy today, so he asked for their understanding and got up first. My father smiled at me for the last time and left the dining room, and then I could see V's following. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Galyahan, who was busily on his way to work, turned around at the unwelcome sound of calling him. It was V's. I haven't received your apology yet. You have called someone in a hurry just to ask for an apology. Gallihan sighed inside and said, I've never done anything to apologize for, brother. Don't you remember kicking me out of the banquet? I've never kicked you out of the banquet. You said you didn't like Tia's birthday banquet, so I just told you to go away. V's face quickly turned red. Once he was afraid of that fiery personality, but Gallihan now felt sorry for such a big brother. He learns that uncontrollable anger will only make him look funny. You, V's pushed his face forward threateningly, but Gallihan remained silent and didn't back down or move forward. I think you're being so self-indulgent trusting our father. How long do you think he's gonna be fine? Gallihan dotted his ears, and he felt a sense of gloom. Vis was really blinded by a desire for power, to the extent that he does not hesitate to ruin his father, Lula. For the second time, Gallihan is once again determined. This time he was awarded the Cheshire territory with a medal. Brother, Gallihan said calmly, but with caution. I'm not interested in Lombardy at all, and I think you know that very well. Vis winced small, but there was still alertness in those eyes. Gallihan continued with a sigh. I'll get out of this mansion in due course. Are you serious? I don't know if this Lombardy is the most valuable thing in the world to you, but I have no intention of letting my daughter live in this mud. Tia is more precious than anything else in the world, so Gallihan intended to separate his daughter from Lombardy's blood relatives. Freely, humanly, breathe and live, so don't touch us, I warned you. Gallihan stared at Vis for the last time, and turned his back and walked away. Left alone, Vis felt very displeased with her brother's impertinent attitude, but he still accepted his surrender statement. He didn't expect it to work out so easily. He can't believe he's not interested in the title. It was as cool as a sore tooth had fallen out. A satisfied smile came naturally. This will prevent Callahan from fighting for the air. These believed there were no more competitors left. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Congratulations on your opening, teacher. I held out a small flower pot from the garden to Clarivan on the way here. The newly hired employees of the company smiled at me for my cuteness. Externally, Clarivan valued my potential so highly that he kept teaching me even though his employment contract with Lombardi ended. It was a measure not to let anyone think it was strange even if I went to the boss often in the future. I'll find a place for the pot. Suddenly the staff quickly took the flower pot from my hand. Well, shall we go upstairs? Clarivan led me to the third floor of the office. When I entered the office, I saw Violet who was waiting for the tea in advance. This time she was an important member of Pellet's company, which I told Clarivan to bring. Click, the door closed, and there were only 3 of us left in the office, and I naturally sat at the top of the table. Now that we've opened our business safely, we need to set our first goal, right? At my words, Clarivan and Violet nodded with serious faces. A sense of pride came over him, as if he had won thousands of horses. I cleared my throat with a cough and opened my mouth. Our pallet's first goal is mining. End of chapter 78. Chapter 79. Mine? Violet asked back blankly. Yes, mine. I'm going to buy a mine in the name of Pellet Company, Violet. Oh yes, the answer was yes. However, his face showed that she didn't understand. That's understandable. I know mines are expensive. That's right. A mine has a similar price to a single estate depending on what is buried. There are times when the difference is several times. I'm sorry, Lady Florentia. Violet raised one hand carefully. What kind of mine do you have in mind? It's a coal mine. Oh, I don't know if that's possible. Violet seemed to be calculating the amount of money I gave her when I opened this pellet company. I'm not going to use the pellet company's money, Violet, but even a relatively cheap coal mine would cost 1,000 gold. The monthly wage of ordinary workers without special expertise is about 3 silver, and when 40 silver pieces are gathered, they are worth gold. In this situation, I get 8 gold per month just by breathing as Lombardi. After adulthood, this money rose to 20 gold. Of course, the money I need to live a basic life is one thing. Since I was born, this money has been steadily piling up in my safe at the Lombardi Bank. After my father's ready-to-wear business started and made Clarivan my man, I left all the money I had saved to Clarivan and invested it at the Gallihan clothing store. And the result, of course, was very successful. Clarivan, do you have enough money? I looked back at Clarivan, who was enjoying tea scents, and asked, well, it doesn't matter if the price of the mine doesn't exceed 3,000 gold. If it goes beyond that, it takes about a month to raise funds. We have to make it cash. That's fine. Violet looked stunned. When she heard me and Clarivan talking casually, 3,000 gold, he murmured quietly as if that money wasn't real. I guess she still needs a little time to get used to it. Anyway, if we're going to carry out the businesses we're thinking about in the future, we should take this opportunity to raise funds. With this single investment, Pellet Company will be one of the best in the empire. I assure you. Clarivan asked me, smiling significantly. You have a mine in mind? As expected, Clarivan. He's good at reading my mind. An old coal mine in the Lira region in the northwest would have been auctioned off. It belongs to the Lencanta family. The size of the mine itself is quite large, but the expectation of the amount of coal left over is very low. In my previous life, the story of the Lira mine was quite famous and was talked about for a while to shake the entire empire. The Lencanta family, which owned the Lira region, did not harvest properly due to the continuing drought. However, they had to pay fixed taxes to the royal family every year, so they borrowed a fortune from other nearby families. In order to pay off the increasing debt, the coal mine, one of its old assets, is auctioned off. It's such a poor coal mine. The last time they did mining was decades ago, but a gemstone which had never been found before is buried beneath this old gold mine. Gold mine, a gem that, when polished by a proper craftsman, is the kind of jewel that everyone aspires to obtain, regardless of the imperial family or aristocracy. At that rate, it would be a successful bid with 1,000 golds. Violet, who seemed a little alert, said in a cautious voice, "If we don't have a competitor, we might be able to lower 600 gold." Clarivan was also optimistic, but I shook my head. 2,000 gold. The original winning bid was 1,800 gold. I was just going to put 200 gold higher. It was a simple auction where each person was given only one chance to bid, so it was easy to win the bid if you knew how much the other person would spend. "You'll have to spend about 2,000 gold to win the bid." "What?" Two people were surprised. "It's not worth 2,000 gold for an old coal mine, Lady Florentia." Clarivan stopped me. "Of course. If it was a newly discovered coal mine, there would still be a lot to be excavated. 2,000 gold is too much. He said it a little while ago. If you don't have a competitor, you can lower the price." That was what Clarivan said a little while ago. There will be competitors on the contrary, so we can't help but go up in price. No matter how competitive they are, Angenas will bid for it. In my previous life, it was Angenas who won the mine and hit a huge jackpot. It was thanks to the jewels found in Lyra that Empress Rabini continued to maintain her power and bribed the nobles to empower Astana, even though her relationship with the emperor gradually deteriorated. The office became quiet. Then Clarivan gulped. "Certainly, if you are going to deal with Angenas, you're going to have to risk that much bleeding." Angenas was recently been rapidly growing in size with aggressive investments in mining. Maybe it's not just a coal mine. "Why do you think so, Violet?" Angenas already has enough coal mines. Even if there's a coal vein that hasn't been discovered yet, there's no reason for Angenas to overdo the cost of development. Violet, with her fingers on her chin, began to think aloud. "But it's common to secretly send a specialist to re-evaluate a mine before you go to auction. You may have other information than the Lancantas don't know." I watched Violet's deduction with pleasure. Gold mines will be more aggressive. We'll have to get it somehow. However, considering that the winning bid is ambiguous, I don't think they want to show it as much as possible. And I could see one realization on Violet's face. Dot, dot, dot. But Violet rather shut her mouth, so I told it on behalf of her. "Iron ore." "But iron ore, it's an unauthorized possession to Angenas." Iron ore, a military resource, was mostly subject to the imperial monopoly. When iron ore was found in their lands, they were often rewarded to the imperial family, raised the title, or granted another land. Of course, Angenas did not do that. They did not release the mine because of the low iron reserves and officially became a family that owned an iron. But what I want is not iron ore. In the first place, iron reserves are small. Of course, it has a separate use. For now, the rest of the story is told after winning a bid for the mine. If I pour out all my plans now, I will only add to the confusion between Clarivan and Violet. I stood up and instructed Violet. "Find out about the Lyra coal mine, Violet." "Yes, Lady Florentia." Violet's eyes burned with a firm will, as it was her first task for me. "And Clarivan comes out in a few days to visit the capitals. Jewels found in this time cannot be handled by ordinary jewelers. You need a very experienced and talented craftsman in the Empire. Only in their hands will the gemstone shine. Now that I've stolen it from Angenas, I plan to get it right. Angenas will miss the mine right in front of his nose, had a stomachache and rolled around. Lombardy repays the good tenfold, and the evil of his enemies tenfold. Well, you should keep it in your heart. Who's trying to steal my dad's business?" Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Early in the morning, I left for the capitals with Clarivan. Of course, the tour of the palace with my teacher. I dressed up with a little more care than usual. On my neck, I wore a flower-shaped necklace carved out of a whole ruby from Perez. It's easy to move around as the highway used by thousands of people every day is well maintained from the imperial palace to Lombardy. Before long, we arrived at Sedacuna, a bustling area mainly used by the nobility in the imperial capitals. Our first destination was a bakery called Caramel Avenue, which opened recently in this Sedacuna. It was a popular place because of the old-fashioned atmosphere with good use of marble and charred wood decorations. I left her alone on purpose today, but Laurel was also a huge fan of this place. "Welcome." A neat-looking employee greeted us with a smile. It was an impressive employee with deep amber eyes with curly brown hair brushed off nicely. "My name is Bate, an employee of Caramel Avenue. May I show you upstairs?" Display and sales were available on the first floor, while dessert and tea were available on the second and third floors. "No, I'm going to buy a cake." "Yes, then I'll take you over there." The more I looked at it, the better it was for dessert shops. I stood behind Bate in front of a display stand with more than 30 different kinds of desserts. Everything looks delicious. It's hard to choose. I knew it. Don't worry about it. Give me everything. Yes? Bate asked with a smile on her face. "I can't choose. Please give me both. Two desserts on display here. The famous from there to there shopping law." From here to there, shopping law. "Oh, please divide the packaging into two. Being rich is the best." I watched the interior of Caramel Avenue, waiting for it to be packed. "I'll pay the bill." Clarivan stepped up and said, "Yes, go ahead. It's going to be handled by pellets." expenses anyway. But Bate, who was going to give the bills, stares at Clarivan's face. What is it? Oh no, I'm sorry. May I help you with the bill? When offended, Clarivan asked Bate, smiled, and quickly apologized. Take one of the packages home and eat it with Laurel and send one to Paris through the top of Lombardy. Is it possible? Yes, Lady Florentia. Then I look away and Bates' amber eyes look at me like she saw Clarivan a while ago. I smiled softly. Go, Sir Clarivan. Yes, lady. Clarivan followed me with two large boxes of cake in both hands, and the gaze of Bate, an employee of Caramel Avenue, followed persistently until we got on the carriage. End of chapter 79. Chapter 80. There's Ivan family store in Sedacuna, right? Yes, in the next alley. Let's go there. The Ivan family in the north, which I encountered when my father received the National Founding Medal, is famous for minerals. Since it is a mountainous area, no mineral does not comes from gold, excuse me, to graphite and coal, which are commonly used throughout life. Especially the jewels in the Ivan area were famous for their luminosity and egg size, so they ran a store directly in Sedacuna. It was a place where jewelry from the Ivan territory was sold only by skilled jewelers, so the shop was always crowded with nobles, and today too. People busily moved in and out of the door under the bright sign that read Ivan. And here is the craftsman who made the gemstone the most beautiful gem in the world that no one has ever successfully honed. Go in, Lady Florentia. Clarivan grabbed the door and said, when I went inside, I saw people sitting around the large store, receiving counseling and buying jewelry. Some of them accidentally turned around to me and whispered among themselves. The kid who just came in, Lombardi's right? I think that's right. Thanks to the National Founding Banquet and my birthday banquet, some people recognize me. As long as I was born Lombardi, it is inevitable. I walked in front of the innermost display in the eye of the people. A man in a uniform standing under bright colorful lights appeared to be in charge here. Welcome, Lady Florentia Lombardi. As expected, you know who I am. In dealing with these nobles, it is competitive to know the personalities of important people in advance. Those were the first things I studied when I was next to my grandfather. Information such as the family tree of high-ranking aristocratic families in the east, west, south, north, and center of the empire, and the relationship between important figures. It's your first visit to Ivan's store. Did you already know about me? I nodded slowly and said to the man, I'd like to see specials, not the ones here. The special item I asked for was not made by ordinary jewelers, but by Ivan's craftsmen. The man paused slightly with a smile on his face and looked at Clarivan standing behind him. Is he with you? He knew me, but not Clarivan. Clarivan replied with a slight frown, perhaps feeling it. I'm Clarivan Pellet. Well, if Lady Lombardi guarantees your identity, you can come in with her. The man spoke softly and opened the door leading to the inside. Clarivan, who was treated as an unidentified person, seemed emotional. Clarivan, who succeeded his father, Romasi Dillard, in my previous life, was a very famous man, but not yet. Clarivan himself tends to be buried because my father acts as a sign in a clothing store. I patted Clarivan on the back, just hang in there a little bit more. When this is over, there will be no one who doesn't know the name Clarivan Pellet. The pellet company named after him will be famous throughout the empire. We followed the person in charge through a soft carpeted passage and entered the inner room. Security was tight enough to open several locks. When the door opened, bright lights were visible from where the jewels were displayed. I pressed down on my pounding chest and looked around at the things in the glass display as if nothing were wrong. I've only heard of the specials inside Ivan. It's my first time seeing them in person. Are you looking for any jewelry in particular? I looked all over the shelves for the object that was intended to be here. Then the man put out the cushion with several jewels in front of me. How about this? I looked at the things and looked at the man again. I felt like I was going to laugh. You're ignoring me, man. I was off guard for a while because I brought him to the inner corner. The white-gloved manager showed me only big things, but the cutting was terrible, or the purity of the jewels was terrible. Excuse me. The man was testing my eye now. It looks big and colorful at first glance, so if you don't have an eye, you'll buy it without knowing it's bad. Maybe I looked funny because I was young. I spoke to the man standing with a brazen face, but I didn't express anger or displeasure. I said in a way that I would just show generosity and turn a blind eye to his mistakes. Let me give you another chance. Bring me the right stuff. Okay, the man lowered his gaze and bowed politely. No, I'll see for myself and choose. I said that and walked slowly in front of the display case, and it wasn't long before I could find it. That one, jewelry is placed in the middle of the specials and the most luminous place. Unlike other objects, which are a bit dull and monotonous, it is light green peridot that enhances the beauty of the gemstones to its maximum with its smooth and fine cut. The creator of that work, is he here now? I'd like to see him. How can I? No, that's a little difficult. I knew it would come out like that. Lord of Ivan can't make it easy to meet such a cherished craftsman, so I prepared something. I looked at Clarivan, half step aside. As I had said before, Clarivan took a step forward. Let me introduce you again. Clarivan Pellet, the director of Gallihan Clothing Store and Pellet Company. Ah, the person in charge blinked in surprise. A man in charge of a Gallihan clothing store, who he openly ignored. I'm sure his heart is pounding with surprise. Clarivan demanded in a low, cold voice, as if to avenge a moment ago. Would you please tell the craftsman who polished this gem that I would like to meet him? Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Who wants to meet me? Crowley, who was working in the studio upstairs of the Ivan store, was annoyed with his wrinkled eyes. He's in charge of the Gallihan clothing store. Why would such a person want to meet me? I don't know. Sheesh. Crowley, who hates being interrupted most, took off his apron while spouting non-abuse. After all, the person in charge of the Gallihan clothing store was in a position to be reckoned with. It was a young girl and a tall man with fierce eyes who greeted Crowley, who came down to the room where the specials were gathered. Crowley ignored the child and approached the man and greeted him. I heard you were looking for me. It was only in Ivan that Crowley was treated no less than a nobleman, but no, anyway, he was a commoner. In addition, Clarivan was in charge of the Gallihan clothing store, which is said to be making all of the Emperor's money alone these days. Crowley, famous for his firm personality, also took off his hat and bent down. Nice to meet you, Mr. Crowley. I'm Clarivan Pellet. But when the man who seemed to have one personality shook hands with a sad smile, he reached out his hand. Oh yeah, Crowley held the hand together at first glance. I'm sorry to interrupt you. You must be busy. There's something I really want to say to you face to face. It was the first time to be treated with respect by a noble after moving to capitals, where a good doctor is located to cure his granddaughter's illness. It's been a while, so it's a little awkward, but because he felt recognized as a craftsman, so the irritation because his work was disturbed had melted away. I heard the name of Ivan's master craftsman, so I'd like to ask Crowley for a request. That's a little difficult, Crowley said, waving his hands. In fact, the schedule was tight, but Crowley was lazy, and it was clear that the result of a request from a noble would be followed by an endless line of requests later. Ivan's jewelry work alone is full. Crowley knew how to defeat the aristocrats who wanted to ask this kind of work, but this is a great opportunity for Crowley. If this old man were a little young, he would have had the strength. I'm sorry. Such Crowley coughed slyly, and Clarivan couldn't push any further and was speechless. At that time, a girl who was looking at the jewelry alone in the corner coughed loudly, as if it was a sign the momentum of Clarivan, which had been softened, rose again. I know you were busy, but I hope you'll consider it, Mr. Crowley. So I've already scheduled. Crowley was slightly annoyed. He didn't seem to give up easily. He vented his accumulated anger. Actually, my granddaughter is ill. I have to take care of her, Lord Pellet. Please forgive me. The granddaughter was treated by doctors and she was growing well, but this excuse was the perfect excuse to refuse. As expected, Clairvon was speechless and going back to the workshop. Take a look. How about a gemstone you've never handled before? It was a girl who coughed a little while ago. Young noble lady. It was because what a noble child of the same age as his granddaughter said hurt his pride as a craftsman. There's no jewel this old man hasn't honed yet. I don't think so. Oh well, there isn't. Can you take responsibility for that? A smiling face is so mean. What would you do if I and Clarivan here brought you a gemstone you've never seen before that doesn't exist in the first place? If that exists, would you like to challenge yourself? Challenge, huh? A challenge to this Crowley who didn't miss a single gem he hadn't honed. He didn't know who the tough little girl was, but the girl scratched Crowley's pride very well. His wrinkled face was red and his mustache fluttered. Yeah, that's great, Crowley said, stretching out his bent back and banging his chest. If you have that kind of jewelry, I'll work on it in a row. The girl who was looking at Crowley with a sound squinted as if she didn't trust him and asked, Are you betting on your honor as a craftsman? Well, I will. At the moment, Crowley bets his pride on what he considered to be more important than his life. Good. I said that and smiled like before. Crowley clinched his shoulders. Somehow a chill ran along his spine. End of chapter 80.